Hello, everyone. Oh, my God. I just touched my heart with that introduction because it's been a little while since I've been back to a HITEC event. But I'm so thrilled to be here today and to look out into this audience and see a ton of old friends, not old in age, just relationships, and to see all the new faces and organizations. So just thrilled to be here. But my real treat is that I get a chance to be on the other side of the interview in the Fireside chat. And I have the pleasure of being able to have Juan Perez, who is the EVP and CIO for Salesforce, join me for this Fireside chat.
Hola, Mirna.
All right.
Hello, everybody.
So I asked the guys in the back to make sure that I had a timer, because if we don't, Juan and I may be here until the gala. Because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to share. This gentleman has an amazing and incredible career in technology, and we're just going to jump right in.
Absolutely, Mirna.
So, Juan, you're at Salesforce today, but I know that you had an incredible career at UPS. 32, is it 32?
32 years, yeah.
32 years at UPS, which is amazing. Why don't you tell us about your journey from UPS to Salesforce?
Excellent, yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. What a pleasure it is for me to be here, and most importantly, to see this amazing room. I tell you, I was reflecting on the flight over how few Hispanics in leadership roles I get to see in all the different interactions that I have with management committees, with executive leadership teams, with boards as well. And to be here surrounded by all of you actually gives me chills. And it tells me that you're definitely committed to your own development, that you want to be a participant and engage with just amazing organizations like HITEC, and that you want to take these opportunities to learn, to connect with others, to network, and to obviously build your careers as time goes by. So great to see you all. Mirna, I had just a phenomenal career with UPS, 32 years. I tell this story often. I started with UPS as an intern, and I never really thought that I was going to stay with the company that long. And I never thought that I was going to be the CIO and the engineering officer of the company for as many years as I was, and I never thought that I'd be the CIO for Salesforce either. So none of that was in the plan when I first started with the company. One thing I will tell you all is that my second job with UPS was as a UPS driver. I drove for the company for about 8 months, and I drove in Beverly Hills, California.
Okay.
90210.
Very nice, very nice.
Delivering to a lot of celebrities that never really wanted to meet me, but that's okay. But I will tell you that that experience really defined who I am as a professional today, quite frankly. And you go 32 years later, I got really to a point in which I felt that it was time for me to retire. For two reasons. I think every professional in the role the roles that I had, one is you get tired. At some point in time, towards the tail end of my career, there were 25,000 people in my team. I was running engineering and IT for UPS. That function has really been dissolved into multiple pieces because it was too big of a job at the time. And every problem in the company was either an IT problem or an engineering problem. So at the end of the day, everything pointed in this direction. And after doing that for a while, you start getting a little tired, one. And two, I've always said that, as professionals in some of these roles, you also have some form of a shelf life. And it's important that you start thinking about the future so that the company can do more, can do better things, can grow, and can excel. And I was really getting to that point where I felt it was time to give others an opportunity for them to do the job, to grow their careers. And also to find new ideas, new ways of doing things, right? After you spend 32 years with a company, you start really getting to think that there's only one solution to every problem. So I retired. Last year. I was retired for 1 day. My wife tells me every single week that I made the worst decision in the planet. She reminds me of that almost every day. But I actually got an offer to come and join Salesforce, just another amazing organization that has really opened my eyes to many new things, new ways of thinking, new technologies, new ways of engaging with customers. I've done more customer engagement in the last year and a half than I would ever imagine I would do. and really connected with a great organization. So that was my transition. And I will tell you, I have zero regrets of having done that.
That's amazing, amazing. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And we know that we have a number of things in common.
Yes.
And one of them is we've both failed at retirement. We have both failed at retirement because we've made attempts to retire, it just doesn't happen. I call it rewirement these days. So
I like that.
But Salesforce is lucky to have you, and that's an amazing transition to that organization. When I came up on stage, I was so excited to bring him up, I failed to do one really important thing. Neither one of us were here for the check-in. And the HITEC check-in has been a tradition for over 10 years to make sure that everyone understands who's in the room and where our Hispanic lineage comes from. So we're going to take like just a second to do that.
Okay.
So we all know the names that are up here. Mirna Soto, I'm the CEO of Apogee Executive Advisors, and my Hispanic lineage is Puerto Rican and Cuban. Wait, let me hear the Puerto Ricans again.
Yeah.
Yes, I have the blessing of growing up in a blended household. Mom was from Puerto Rico and Dad is from Cuba. So now it's your turn.
Okay, so you know, there must be a lot of Mexicans here because, yeah, you see, we ran out of flags back there. And I kept looking through the flags, finding a Mexican flag, and there was none. But, you know, my parents both, my dad passed away a few years back, but my mom is still alive, both of them Cuban. They left Cuba in 1963. They were political refugees in the US. They realized that they could not really restart their business. You know, my dad's business, he was an entrepreneur. He had a pretty good, successful business in Cuba. He lost it all. And he realized that language was going to be a barrier, so he ended up going to Mexico. And my brother and I were born in Mexico. I was there until I was 18 years old to then go to college. And I really feel that my stronger connections, of course, are to the US. I've lived now 40 of my 57 years here in the United States. But then, of course, to Mexico. I grew up there. I have just great memories of my childhood in Mexico.
That's awesome, amazing. And for the record, for the last 10, 12, 14 years, Mexico always wins at this check-in process. Always, hands down, hands down.
Yeah. We need more flags for next year.
We do. Make a note, we need more flags. So I've heard you speak in the past about the leadership principles that much of which I know that you cultivated, that you supported, and that you nurtured with your teams at UPS. Mm-hmm. Please share with us a couple of nuggets on those principles.
I'd be happy to. Look, I've come to realize after all these years of being in all these different jobs and roles that most of the challenges that organizations face, you can actually trace them all back to some level of lack of leadership. Some level of lack of engagement from the leadership team, lack of understanding by the leadership team, and of course, leadership at all levels in the organization. So I've been a student of leadership now for a number of years, and I really believe that leadership is key in succeeding in absolutely anything that anyone does, in no matter what job you actually have. Now, I was fortunate to work for just a great company, UPS, for those 32 years, and UPS is truly founded on really strong principles, leadership principles. And then, of course, over the years, you get to work with lots of leaders. Some are better than others. So you actually start creating your own mindset as to what good leadership really looks like. And you start also working towards living by those leadership principles. So I established my own 10 leadership principles. I'm not going to go through all of them with you. I'll tell you just a few that I think are really, really important for leaders of today. You know, the first one, and I heard the term used earlier today, that was awesome to hear, but it's having that fire in the belly. It's always that, to me, first, having that desire to do well, having that desire to do well for people, for the teams that you represent, for the organization that you represent, having that desire to go beyond what is just simply expected of you. And for us Hispanics, for us Latinos, we have definitely to live with that in us, that fire in the belly to truly excel in what we do. The second one for me has always been having this mindset of being service-oriented. Leaders need to be thinking about providing service. Not only if you're in a service organization like I was before, but being of service to your teams. The whole notion and the whole concept of servant leadership, to me, is incredibly important for all of us as leaders to observe. we are in the positions that we're in, not to serve ourselves. I've met lots of leaders over the years who were in position more concerned about them and their careers than they were truly concerned about the company first, and right after that, their people. So being a servant leader is critical, and being service-oriented is absolutely key. The next one is integrity. My goodness, you can think about a lot of issues that companies have had over the years as a result of lack of integrity. And if there's one thing that has truly helped me stand out in my job day in and day out, is that I've always approached my job with a high degree of integrity. And a lot of that came from my dad, because he lived his life with a high level of integrity, but also from even the founder of UPS back in 1907, who made it clear that to be successful in business, there were two core principles that every UPSer needed to maintain in mind. The first one was integrity in absolutely everything you do, and the second one is excellence in absolutely everything you do. So when I was a young supervisor 33 years ago, that really stuck with me, Mirna, and I believe that that's truly foundational for building a strong career and being effective as a leader.
Those nuggets are incredibly insightful. And I know that many of us have heard leaders in the past make similar quotes, but I really want you to consider what Juan has shared, the trajectory that his career had at UPS as a result of those two principles and where you are today. So thank you for being such an incredible leader, and in particular, an incredible supporter of this community, because I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work to support Latinos, Hispanics, not only in tech, but in business across the board.
But Mirna, the reality is, and I talked about this briefly, I've always been an advocate for Latinos. After all, I was the first Latino in the UPS Management Committee after 116 years of the company being in existence. And I want you to think about this too. Thank you. But I want you to think about this too. As of now, I'm no longer with UPS. I'm still the only Latino in the UPS Management Committee after all these years. And although I always try to promote Latinos by my own behaviors, by my own engagement, by my own professionalism, and the way that I did my job every single day, although, remember, in engineering and IT, all problems were mine. I screwed up everything every single time. But even when those things were not going well, I had to represent the company and had to represent Latinos the right way. But even after all of that, if there's one thing that I still think often about, is how much more I could have done, how much more I should have done, and how many more opportunities I should have been able to find for more Hispanics in the company. So I carry that with me. I would like to do more now that I'm at Salesforce. I have a great group of Salesforce professionals who are here. There you are. Thank you. Who are here representing also the Hispanic community in the company, and who I'm counting on to continue to create and build more opportunities for Latinos.
Well, I certainly want to encourage you to continue to do all the things that you have done and are doing now at Salesforce. The one thing that I would share with you, and I know that you carry that, your lineage at UPS, and the feeling that you could have, should have done more. But the reality is that these things take time. These are big, big movements. And even considering the age of the company when you entered the organization and that you entered the management ranks. And I think it's a good thing for us to think about as a group, because I am often asked about, hey, we need to do more, we need to do more. And obviously, we all want to continue what I call the battle cry, to make sure that we have the opportunities that we rightfully deserve, and that the doors are cracked open a little bit for us to walk through and to prove our value. But these things do take time. So I want to say that and reinforce that, because I am certain that you planted a ton of seeds at UPS, and I know that one day there are going to be people that will come to you and tell you the impact you had on them that you are not even realizing today.
Thanks.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. So I've heard you reference servant leadership, and I've also heard you reference being very business inclined as a technologist. Mm-hmm. I believe that you use the term intimate.
Yes.
Business intimate. Driving a truck for 9 months at UPS is certainly one way to get intimate with the business. But tell me about what you're doing at Salesforce right now.
Yeah.
I know you do a bunch of customer reviews and you have direct lines with users, but tell us more.
Absolutely. I mean, that whole notion of business intimacy is incredibly important. If you go back years ago, and many of you have been in IT for a long, long time, you go back, 15 years ago, IT was working kind of in its own world, a little siloed, not as connected with the business. Business would actually send you requirements over and say, hey, go build this. IT would go out into its hole and start building stuff. And then after that, you'd come out and say, hey, here you go. And then, of course, everybody was unhappy because none of the requirements were met. And at the end of the day, the business objectives were not met. That's the way that it was before. I cannot imagine today, in all my experiences these days, of an IT organization that is separate and independent from the business. And that's where the term business intimacy comes from. Whether you are working on the implementation of AI, or you're building or developing a new product, or you're actually connecting with customers to solve their problems, I truly believe that today, more than ever before, the IT organization needs to be business intimate. How do you achieve that? Got to be a student of the business, got to be connected with the business, got to be a participant in the business success and in its failures as well. Now, at Salesforce, I'm really excited because the way that we are driving the concept of business intimacy is, first of all, by getting out of the hole and making sure that we're right next to the business partners, making sure that the way that we measure our success is not only based on the traditional IT metrics that all of us have heard for decades now, but it's truly based on measuring the things that matter most to the business, the things that are going to make the business successful. And therefore, when you complete a project and you say, 100% effective in getting the project done, that you don't celebrate just to that point. You got to celebrate the fact that the technology was used, that it derived business value, that it actually made the company better. So really changing that mindset is important. And then secondly, I work in a technology company. I'll tell you all that working as a CIO at UPS, where the IT organization was at the center of the universe, and everything was really driven by what happened there, and in operations and in engineering, to move over to Salesforce, the CIO is no longer at the center of the universe by any means. The technology that we build, the technology that your companies buy and that you guys use, is what's at the center of the universe. So it's been a lesson for me. I've had to change a lot in the way that I think about support for technology. But what I think is critical here is that we've also are customer zero. We get a chance to use the Salesforce technology first. We get a chance to see how good it is, issues that it may have, problems that it may have. And then we have this virtuous cycle, Mirna, that allows us to take all those lessons learned, keep feeding them back to the product teams, and keep building a better product for our customers at the end of it.
Well, that's what makes that organization, Salesforce, incredibly successful in how they serve their customers. And there's a takeaway in what Juan just shared. We're all in the technology space to one degree or another. We really have to ask ourselves, are we doing technology for technology's sake? Or are we doing it to improve our businesses, to improve the value of our customers, to improve the experience that each and one of our companies is providing, which leads me to something I'm super jealous about. I understand that you're running the Office of Transformation at Salesforce, which is so cool. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, transformation has a bad view many times. But I believe after all these years, I think, I go back to when I first started as a CIO back in 2015. It's hard to believe that it's been that many years. And, we had to go through a transformation in the company. In fact, it was not only a company transformation. UPS, just to put it in perspective, and I don't remember the numbers as well as I used to before, but had to reduce its overall non-operating expense by over $4 billion because of how heavy non-operating expense was for the company. Think about it as G&A. And there was a significant transformation in the organization. But today I look back and I see the UPS financial performance, the stock performance that the company's had. And quite frankly, if the company wouldn't have made the decision to work on transformation then, we would have been in trouble. Well, same thing happened to the IT organization. The IT organization had done a great job for decades at UPS, but it really was not equipped for the future. And it was in desperate need of a transformation. I mean, back in 2015, we implemented Salesforce at UPS back then, and it was the first use of software as a service in the company. UPS was building everything itself. You know, we had incredible developers that built everything from the ground up. But that was not going to work. The company definitely needed to transform. So transformation after transformation, coming into Salesforce, I also realized that on the IT side, and by the way, it was clear that for the company to be able to scale to, you know, we're on the path to now $40 billion in revenues. I believe that the company is on a path to get to 50, 60, 70 billion over the next few years. Well, we realized that IT was not in a position to support that growth. So it needed another transformation. And at the same time, you know, just earlier this year, Salesforce was under significant pressure by 7 activist investors. I've never seen anything like that. And for those of you who, you know, are connected with the finance teams and the financial performance of a company, having activist investors telling you what to do is never a good thing. Never, never, never a good thing. So that's where we were. The company needed another transformation. So we've been working actively in, you know, managing our processes better, actively working in managing our expenses differently, making sure that we allocate monies to the things that matter most and that will create and generate the most value for the company. And then on the IT side, modernizing IT, modernizing technologies to support growth and scale. So it's been really, really exciting. At the same time, it's been really challenging.
Fantastic.
You can imagine, Myrna, you know, we in the software space, transformation was not really a core theme or a core need. You know, the company could spend money left and right as it saw fit. Not anymore. There's got to be more control and really better investments in innovation and growth. And that's where we're going.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the reason why I say I'm super jealous, because the opportunity to lead that, and you're right, the nomenclature around transformation. Did my mic just go out? Yeah, I think it did. The nomenclature around transformation is always seen as a negative, and I really would make the challenge to everyone in this room to embrace these type of initiatives, because they're all about improving our efficacy, improving our efficiency, and reinventing the things that we do, because change is obviously a constant for all of us.
But that's a really important and key point. I think transformation doesn't have to be viewed as this initiative that is driven by the CEO and the corporation. Of course, that's that type of transformation. But I think we all are in a position to be constantly transforming our roles, our jobs, what we do for the betterment of the company. And quite frankly, I mean, transformation is here to stay. We'll always be transforming business. I will tell you, specifically in my company with Salesforce now, the push for AI it's enormous. It's huge. And I actually think, you know, I don't get excited about a lot of fads and, you know, cool technologies that at the end go away. But I do get excited about technologies that are here to stay and that can be transformative. I really believe that generative AI in particular, because AI has been around for a long, long time, I definitely believe that generative AI will be transformative. And I think for all of us as technology leaders, I think it's really important to be thinking about how AI is going to transform our business, what you do, what your groups do, how work is done. It's going to be critical. So transformation is here to stay.
So I shared with you earlier today that I had the pleasure of doing a talk for women in technology at Salesforce back in April. And it happened to be the very same day that Salesforce introduced the Einstein GPT functionality within the platform. I thought it was amazing. And we spent the entire time talking about generative AI. We thought we were going to talk about cybersecurity, but we talked about generative AI. And obviously, we did have a moment or two to speak about cyber. You know, you're customer zero. Einstein is a little bit more geared to sales pipeline and responding to customers. Tell me a little bit about, you know, how your team got involved with Einstein.
Absolutely, incredibly exciting. Just to give you a perspective, Salesforce has a group of over 100 really, really solid AI experts. I mean, these are folks who have PhDs from Stanford and from some of the best universities that have really paid attention to AI for not only now, but a number of years. And Salesforce also, I mean, I find it really, really fascinating. Salesforce has been in the field of AI and embedding AI into CRM, customer relationship management, for a long, long, long time. So the company was not really new to the use of these types of tools and technologies to support our customers. In fact, you know, Einstein, the tool that has been in place for a number of years, supports the generation of all kinds of predictions based on customer data. You know, and we're talking trillions of predictions in short intervals of time. So that's been in place. Now you bring in generative AI. And by the way, I give all the credit in the world to Mark Benioff, because he truly is a product genius. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And you know, he had a conversation with the OpenAI guys over dinner, and suddenly the light bulb went on, and he realized that, my goodness, the future of Salesforce, it's really going to be in building the #1 AI CRM platform in the world.
Love it.
And that was really what he drove. So think about it. At the beginning of the year, we have 6, 7 activists. We transform the company. We start changing our operating performance to be more in line with expectations by our investors. Mark sees that it's critical to now transition the company into growth, and he sees AI as that catalyst to drive growth in the organization. Incredible. And the pivot and the flip that I have seen this organization make from all that ugliness at the beginning of the year to now having real products that support AI, Myrna, is short of a miracle, quite frankly. And I mean, I get the benefit of actually seeing these technologies take life before they go out into the general public. And, you know, we implement them in our groups. Our sales professionals, for example, now have access to, you know, Einstein Sales, where emails to customers are automatically generated with great content and with really good intelligence. The system also, the AI-based systems now allow the sales executives to really summarize interactions and calls and activity with customers so that they can be much more focused on what's most important to the customer. And then on the service side, we are implementing Einstein Service. It's also fascinating to see how the industry is going to change when it comes to providing support to customers through the use of generative AI, and getting to a point where now engineers that provide support to you and your company, instead of just, you know, having to read all these manuals and try to figure out what the problems are, using generative AI, they can get to a pinpointed answer much quicker than before.
The absolute ultimate example of the co-pilot that we've talked about earlier today, about you know, the fear around generative AI and the impact that it may have on the workforce. But the reality is that this example and everything that you've shared, and what I believe in other organizations, is going to be such an incredible catalyst for the appropriate growth and momentum that companies just cannot do without themselves, you know, without this type of co-pilot and this type of knowledge. The data is obviously key, right? And many people have said, you may have heard this before, and I had a really long discussion at an event recently in California where we were talking about the adage that data is the new oil. Well, the reality is that data is also the new sand, right? That can slow certain organizations down. And the other reality is that data is also the new asbestos, right? So it's great when it's really high quality, high fidelity data. Problematic when it has some noise in the system like sand, and that could slow down the gears in a machine, and could be incredibly devastating to an organization if decisions or biases or even the directions that a sales team may have, if the quality of data is bad. I know that Salesforce is doing an incredible amount of work around the fidelity of data, but can you share a little bit more about?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I have learned by being at Salesforce, you know, obviously as a CIO, just like you, I had responsibility for cybersecurity in the company. The CISO reported through my organization. It was my #1 priority as a CIO. I had 5 core priorities as a CIO, which, by the way, I carry to this date in my new job, and I will never change. The first one is, of course, cybersecurity. It has to be. For all of us in this space, we got to continue to drive that. Now, coming into Salesforce and learning more about how the organization really manages security has been fascinating to me. And it all actually aligns with the values of the company. Values are important. That's one of the reasons why actually I was attracted to Salesforce when the opportunity came, because the values really align with my values in many ways. Not that I'm in agreement with everything that Salesforce says and does. We always have some differences. But in terms of the core values, I was really well aligned. And the number one value is trust. So now, I tell you all that because that number one value has now transitioned into building responsible, trusted products. And it's not more, this is the most important it's ever been to ensure that there's trust built into the AI technologies that we're developing. So the way that Salesforce has addressed that problem is that, you know, when you, in the AI prompt, when you type anything, before you actually see the final outcome that comes to you from that particular prompt, there's an entire trust layer that goes through a number of validations and verifications to make sure that at the end, that output can be trusted. But back to your point, you can have that enormous, very well-defined, effective trust layer that if the data is bad, it's poor, you're going to be in trouble. What Salesforce has really done is it's also put significant effort into building a data platform that actually can be as well trusted as the source of data to support all of the CRM-related activity that happens on our platform. And we're excited about it. We call it the Data Cloud. I think it's going to truly change the way that our customers manage data within their organizations. And that, combined with the trust layer in AI, I think is going to give us a bit of an advantage in the way that we make AI real for our customers.
No doubt, no doubt. I'm super excited about the future in this space and excited about what Salesforce is doing and has already proven to be a very significant trust model, which you're absolutely correct is the key to us continuing on this journey with generative AI and other outputs of this miraculous technology. So let's shift gears a little bit. You and I both have another thing in common. We have the pleasure of serving on boards. You know, I said that earlier that I've failed at retirement. I have. I currently serve on a number of publicly traded boards, privately held organizations. I'm yet again a little jealous because this gentleman gets the pleasure of serving on the board of the Hershey Company. Yes, and I love candy.
Yes.
Specifically chocolate. So let's talk about your journey to the board. I'm going to make an assumption, and you tell me if it's correct. I imagine the Hershey Company saw your experience at UPS, and when they considered things like global logistics and supply chain management, they said, this is the type of person we're looking for on the board. Or was the scenario different?
No, I think it's that. First of all, you know, Myrna, I got to tell you, every time I go to a board meeting, specifically in Hershey, at the end of the board meeting, we have what they call the market for the board members. So we get these big old bags, and we can fill them with all the chocolate we want. And, you know, when I told that to my doctor during my physical, the first time that I went around, he said, you couldn't have selected
a
worse board for you, Juan. What are you thinking? And I said, well, no, you know, the candy's pretty good. It's been just a fascinating experience. And before I answer your question, I will tell you this. You know, now I am actually the chair of the governance committee for the Hershey board, which is truly an honor for me. But by the way, it's truly an honor for me to serve on the Hershey board. And I'm so proud. You know, I've had a lot of opportunities to join other boards. I always say no. Not for the candy, but actually for the great company that Hershey is. I mean, I told you that UPS has been in business for 116 years. Hershey has been in business for 126 years now.
Amazing.
Think about that. And the mission of the company is unbelievable because the number one shareholder for the Hershey Company is the Hershey School that supports kids that are in definite need. My goodness, the work that the Hershey School does in support of kids of low income, difficult situations at home is just phenomenal. So that's really what drives me to be part of the Hershey board. And it really even gets me emotional to think about the mission of the company. When I sit on that board, of course, I'm thinking about the shareholders, But I also remember constantly that there's a big one, and that big one happens to be that little kid that needs the support from all of us as we do our jobs as board members. Now, I will also tell you this. As part of the governance committee, and of course chairing the board, one of my number one responsibilities is board refreshment, making sure that we have the right board composition for the future. And that's something that has to be constantly top of mind for the organization. You want to make sure that you have a board that, one, is well represented, number two, has the right skill sets and capabilities, number three, is diverse, and number four, is effective in working as a board to ultimately help the organization drive outstanding performance. That's the way that I view it. Today, I cannot imagine a board that doesn't have appropriate representation, minority representation, especially for a company like Hershey. Hershey, one of its core strategic initiatives is to actually continue to make its products available to the Hispanic community, because we like candy at the end of the day, right? So how can you possibly be effective at really communicating to the community that you care about their communities if your board doesn't have that appropriate representation? And the same thing is happening across many companies out there. And my message to you is that as you develop your careers, as you grow into leadership roles in your companies, there is a need for Hispanics to be on boards. And there will be many opportunities, especially when it comes to IT. Boards today are really challenged with questions around cybersecurity. You know that because
Very well.
you hear this all the time. Boards today are challenged with questions around, well, what are we going to do with all this AI stuff? And by the way, reading the pamphlet on the way to the board meeting is not enough. You got to be much more knowledgeable about what the impact of these technologies is. And you, of course, want to make sure that the technology strategy for the company is solid. And that's why CIOs, CISOs, technologists, CTOs being on boards is going to become a more important part of what happens. And when you put all those things together and you look at what I had an opportunity to do through my career, worked in logistics, worked on international assignments, worked on domestic assignments, had a chance to work on IT for a number of years, did a lot of engineering work in building capacity for UPS, automation, those kinds of things, and now transitioning to Salesforce. Well, those are skills that the board is looking for, and it really allowed me to get that grade up.
That's fantastic. And yet again, you and I have another thing in common.
Yes.
I've just recently been taken over the chair role for one of my boards for Nom and Gov.
Awesome.
So here's what we're going to commit to one another. We talked about needing to do more. We both have an opportunity to do that with board refresh.
I agree.
And I hear that you already have that front and center, so that's fantastic.
And let's make sure that we also exchange. When you hear about great candidates out there, that you let me know.
Absolutely, and there's some in the audience here.
Yeah.
I've worked with many people in the audience about kind of taking a step for preparing. There was an entire board readiness program at the start of our time together here at the Lake House, which, by the way, this place is phenomenal.
It is.
I love this place. But yes, there is a need for us to make sure that the representation in the boardroom represents us. And it also starts with the representation in executive management and other leadership positions in technology, which we're all focusing on here today. Let's go back to Salesforce for a second and your journey to Salesforce. I realized between the activists, Einstein, and the departure of a couple of C-level executives in the organization that a lot has happened at Salesforce in your year and a half tenure. What have you learned? What were one of these crazy discoveries?
One of the key leadership principles that I learned a long time ago is that for you to be successful in any job, you got to be resilient. And I would make the argument that for us Latinos, Hispanics, we got to be sometimes much more resilient than others. That's really my argument. It's my belief. Cannot give up at the first no. You cannot give up at the first rejection. Certainly have to sacrifice sometimes. My wife has been just phenomenal in supporting our sacrifices. We relocated 8 different times with UPS, and that really created and opened opportunities for us. Not that I expect everyone to do that these days, but certainly helped us create opportunities for ourselves. When you go through all of that, you get to learn more about resiliency and, most importantly, acceptance of change. And my goodness, have I had to accept change at Salesforce. The guy who actually invited me to join the company, I mean, I have incredible appreciation for him, and I really was looking forward to working for him, to be quite frank with you. His name is Brett Taylor. He was the co-CEO of Salesforce. Now, there's no more co-CEO at Salesforce. There's only one CEO at Salesforce, is Mark Benioff. But Brett Taylor, my goodness, the guy was the CTO for Facebook. He was the CTO for Google. Brett wrote Google Maps. So if you use Google Maps to get here, you're using something that was actually built by the guy who I used to report to. Brett was actually the inventor of the thumbs up emoji when he was in Facebook. That's Brett Taylor. He formed a couple of companies. He formed a company called Quip, a word processor that sits on the cloud and that allows better collaboration than anything that he was a pioneer in actually building those types of technologies. So Mirna, you can imagine, I'm getting towards the tail end of my career, and I get an opportunity to work for a guy like that.
No question.
I jumped on that because it was just another learning opportunity, which, by the way, that's another lesson, leadership lesson. You never stop learning.
That's right.
You got to keep educating yourself. I've had to educate myself so much over the last year and a half. It's phenomenal. But I saw that opportunity to learn more, not because I needed to go work for Salesforce, but because I wanted to learn more. So, Brett decides to leave the company. I think he's formed another company himself. The CHRO, who convinced me to join the organization as well, just recently took another role in another company, so they both are gone. But my goodness, the one thing that has helped me all throughout my career continues to help me at Salesforce. And that is, remember, work with high levels of integrity and put excellence in absolutely everything you do. And those two principles have helped me navigate through Salesforce. And I am really committed to helping the organization. That's another important thing that I have learned, another leadership lesson. Whatever you do, you got to do it with purpose. And I have purpose at Salesforce. I have no intentions of being the CEO of the company. I have no intentions of doing anything else, anything different than what I am doing today. The intentions that I have are to be the best CIO for the company, to set up this organization for the future. And when you have those three things in perspective, integrity, excellence, and purpose, it's really easy to navigate through.
You can't go wrong. That's great advice. Great advice, and another example of being tenacious when these things are happening around you and you remain focused to those principles. Thank you for sharing that.
By the way, it's interesting, Mirna. A lot of people, when Brett left the company, they asked me, so when are you going to leave? And I said, no, I'm not here for Brett Taylor. I'm here for Salesforce. And, again, it's purpose. And when you have that purpose and mission, to your point,
can't lose.
You can't lose.
Can't lose. So we've got a few more minutes before we're going to open it up for questions. So I'm going to go a little personal.
Yes.
Although we've already kind of scratched
That's okay.
the personal surface. Women in technology.
Yes.
And I'm going to say in particular, Latinas in technology.
Mm-hmm.
In my early years of getting into the tech field, and we've said this 1,000 times, we've often been the only ones in the room, not necessarily given many opportunities to grow. We've had to be tenacious and to be able to get out there and exert ourselves and get involved in things that would allow us to develop our careers. I know you have a daughter in technology. I'd love to hear from you what you've seen her go through, that evolution, and what kind of surprised you.
Well, this is perhaps the thing that touches me the most in my professional career. By the way, ladies like you are truly role models for ladies like my daughter, and pioneers and people who truly demonstrate what can be done and what you can accomplish. And I've always felt that my daughter needed those role models. She would come to me at the early days of her career, and she would ask me, Dad, I encountered all these problems at work. What should I do? And, me not being in her position, I would say, well, you got to work harder. You got to do more. You got to show up earlier. All those nonsense things that would come to mind. But I finally recognized that, at the end, I could give her all the advice in the world of what worked for me, and she would certainly accept that. But at the end of the day, she became my coach.
Nice.
She really became my coach. And my daughter has been just an inspiration for me in many ways. By the way, she's having her second baby. It may be today, it may be tomorrow. I tell you. And I told my wife, hey, I'm going to a conference with HITEC. And she said, are you crazy?
You better
and I
be
said,
back.
No, I'm committed. I'm committed. So,
Well, thank you.
and by the way, that little grandson of ours has been the most incredible thing in the world for us. He's truly the meaning of our lives now. And it's the biggest gift that my daughter could have ever given my wife and I. And my goodness, we are just so blessed.
That is fantastic.
Thank you. But my daughter's journey is really interesting. My daughter, to tell you a little bit about her, my daughter graduated with a computer science degree and a minor in business from Georgia Tech. It's a tough school.
Very.
When she went to school, she used to be the only Hispanic woman in the classroom. And in many cases, the only woman in the classroom. But she navigated through all of that, and she persevered, and we had to support her to get there. So that's lesson number one. We got to support our daughters as they're going through these tough STEM fields, right? You don't know the numbers of times that my daughter came crying and saying, Dad, I can't do this. Why am I doing this? I want to move to something else. And my wife and I were there to support her. She could have very easily quit and said, I'm not doing this anymore. So she went through that. She was determined to demonstrate that she could do it. She got an MBA from the University of Florida. I tell you all that because I want to paint the picture that my daughter is highly qualified. And she learned Korean on her own.
Wow.
At Georgia Tech, got a minor in Korean. She is qualified, but that didn't really matter. What happened to her in many cases, she started working in consulting, nothing against my friends at KPMG. She didn't work for KPMG, just for the record. But she worked for 2 other major consulting companies. And of course, as she moved from one to the other, it was for more opportunities, better pay, which, by the way, I couldn't do in 33 years. So my daughter already taught me something different. Took me 33 years to actually change companies. It took her a couple of years to find another opportunity and to continue to grow. And then after the second consulting job, she was in the development field working with the consulting companies. She decided to get to a job with Chick-fil-A as an IT manager working there, and because she wanted to form a family. And just, my goodness, I give her all the credit in the world. She made the toughest decision that she could ever make, because I know my daughter. She's driven, she wants to be a professional, not a CISO, but she wants to continue to progress in her career. But she saw herself not being able to handle the 2 babies the right way, and she just quit. Basically left all of that behind to take care of her family. But thank you. In that time frame, I will tell you, my daughter would come to me and describe to me so many different challenges. First of all, being the woman in the room who no one would listen to. Second, being the youngest woman in the room, filled with a lot of folks who would not respect her opinions and would not give her the time of day to describe what she had to say. Third, in some cases, even leaders who would not really pay attention to the fact that there was someone qualified sitting at the table who had opinions and views, that leader not giving room for that particular person to actually speak and to communicate openly about what was going on, the ideas, the thoughts that she had. In many cases, recognition, where the team would be recognized, all the men would be recognized first, and the woman would be recognized at the end. So my daughter would share all those things with me. Finally, by the way, she got to the point where she was not complaining anymore, because I made it really clear, I cannot change any of that for you. I don't work in these companies, and I'm not going to call their CEOs to tell them to take care of my daughter. And she said to me, that's not what I want you to do, Dad. But what I want you to do is to think about how you create a better environment for the women in your group. And I've been really committed to that since I had those conversations with my daughter 5, 6 years ago.
Love it.
And I'll tell you, another lesson learned.
Yep.
It takes leadership, again, to make sure that we create great opportunities for women in technology. And it takes leadership from men. Let me tell you what, it takes leadership from women as well.
That's right.
Absolutely. And I'm no one to tell you this, but I will tell you that in many cases, women themselves would not create great opportunities for younger women in the organization. I think that needs to change.
Yeah, no, unequivocally. And, first of all, thank you for listening to her, taking her advice, becoming a constant learner, even in this circumstance, and applying it into the leadership of your teams, because that will make a world of difference. And kudos to her for making the decision to put her family first. That was what was important to her. And it's a really important thing for Latinas to hear. We all want to do everything. We want to advance in our careers. We want to have our families. We want to do everything. And at times, it's just a process of balancing what we can do and managing the values of what is important to us. So kudos to her. I don't think she'll be done. When the kids are a little older,
No.
I think she'll be back in the game.
I agree, but you know, I got to tell you one thing that really struck me. When she was making the decision, and it was a really difficult one.
Bet.
You know, her husband, of course, he's in technology as well, but taking a good salary from a technology job is a big hit for the family. But my daughter's concern was none of that. She was most concerned as to what I would think about her stopping work.
Amazing.
And my goodness, that really hurt too.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing those personal stories. So we have a few minutes. Love to take any questions from the audience, either here live in the room or virtually. I can't see out there, can you? Anybody have a question?
There's one right there.
Okay. Do we have a mic?
All right, thank you guys for the great stories. My question is for you, Juan, with the experience you have. Now that you're at the level you're at, how do you get to the point where, with a technology like AI, right, where maybe you didn't know that much about it a few years ago, how do you get yourself to the point where the information is brought to you, you really understand it at a level where now you can make big decisions that impact the company?
Yes.
And when did you feel comfortable that you were at that level?
It's a great question. First of all, I don't feel comfortable at all. That's probably one of the best things, that you always have to feel a little uncomfortable. The moment that you feel too comfortable, that you know the answers, that's problematic for me. I want to feel uncomfortable, and I want my team to actually continue to push me to feel uncomfortable, because that's what drives me to find the next generation of updates, improvements, gains that we can make. Obviously, I'm really fortunate when it comes to AI. You know, just last week I met with the chief scientist for Salesforce, who is responsible for the build out of all the large language models for the organization. So I have direct contact with some of these experts. I'd encourage you, if in your organization those experts are available, spend time with them. By the way, these AI folks, they want to share everything they know.
They do.
They really do. And it's kind of like, for the first time, the spotlight is completely on them. And they've been working in the background all these years, and now suddenly, boom, here you are. You're on the spotlight. So they want to share, take advantage of those resources. Colleges and universities are going to be trying to find ways to actually build some form of curriculum and certifications in this space. I don't think that they are there yet. It's going to take a little time for that to happen. But when that happens, take advantage of that as well. And then if you have an opportunity to work on a project, any project that has any type of connection to AI, whether it's the implementation of AI or it's Salesforce technology with AI used in the business, jump on those, man. Those are good opportunities to really learn. Great question. Thank you.
We have a question from a member of our virtual audience. Cynthia Porter asks, as you said, transformation is constant. How do you encourage those who you lead to embrace and accept the change?
You have gone through transformation. You started. You give me time to think.
Sure, I'll give you a few minutes. First and foremost, I think it's really important for folks to understand the concept of change. You mentioned constant learning. There's an evolution to every single thing we do in our lives, in our world. So when we think about transformations, unfortunately, folks will automatically think it's a negative impact to them, into their role or into their teams. So one of the ways that I've been able to encourage my teams to embrace transformation, first and foremost, is involving them in what the definition of success is in the transformation. Rather than it be, we're doing this transformation because this is the result we're looking for, it becomes much more of an open, participative process when we say, we're looking to accomplish the following things. And if we were to transform a number of processes or transform the way that we consume technology, what do you believe are our biggest opportunities of success? It's just one example. And I think engagement, having people be part of that definition, be part of the scope, they see themselves now being a player on the team, a player in seeing that through, and then they quickly become more embraced into what's transpiring and what I like to call having skin in the game. They are now looking to form a team and to act as a team to get to that successful mark.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. You know, transformation sometimes is viewed as elimination of jobs,
Right.
get rid of more positions. You know, we worked with a consultant when we were determining who was going to be our partner for transformation, who instead of calling the Office of Transformation the Office of Transformation, called it the Catalyst Office. And it really resonated with me. We didn't end up calling it that at the company, but I think the idea here is how do you become a catalyst for change? And change is needed many times to be able to get better performance.
And you know, words matter. What we call things, how it's understood, the nomenclature, extremely important to people.
I agree.
One of my organizations, on one of my boards, we're going through a massive transformation in the company. And the group that's leading it from a management layer, it's the Office of Optimization.
There you go. Yeah.
I think we have another question here.
Yes.
Hi. Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing the story about your daughter. I think that really resonated, especially seeing so many women, especially at this summit, which is incredible. I wanted to share something maybe a little controversial, but I have a colleague who recently had her first baby in the workforce, and her husband decided to leave his job and stay home. Not something we commonly see. I was also in your daughter's position with each of my 3 children. I had to make a difficult decision, and I love your advice around supporting the women in your organization through that. I was wondering if, for the men, you had some tactical advice as to how to support their wives, sisters, colleagues, and women in those positions.
Yeah, it's also a very important question. And look, I can only think about my own world, right? And I see my daughter's husband, how worried he is. I can actually sense it, right? Hey, look, no, one thing is to have one baby, but now another one is to have a second one, right? So being the father of 2, going from one salary to another. But I think the most important thing that for my wife and I has been to actually let them know that they're not alone, that we are here to support them with anything that we can, that we are here to actually provide guidance when necessary, and when they feel alone and that the world is on their shoulders and that they can handle all these, that they have someone who actually will listen and will be there to support him as needed. To me, that is the most valuable thing that I can actually offer him.
Thank you.
I want to add something to that and say that as soon as we gender neutralize the roles of the caregivers, I think that is when we'll have the greatest amount of success. I mean, we talk about HITEC as a familia, and I truly believe that. We feel that in the room. You know, when folks have children, it takes a village. It takes a village, right? And if we neutralize any stigma associated with parental leave for the father, I think, things start to change in that support system. But thank you for the question.
Great question.
So we are, unfortunately, because you and I could be talking.
You got another question right there.
Oh, I do? Do I have time to take one, Omar? Last one. Okay, last question. Hi.
Hi, Myrna. Hi, this question is for both of you. My name is Julissa Judd, and I have a young student with me. And I would like to hear from both of you, actually. If you can give me an example, just one example, of a challenge that you had to go through your long careers, a difficult situation that somehow you turned it into a blessing. Because a lot of times, especially when you have long careers, you have so many challenges and you have so many things that in the moment you have to overcome and realize that things don't necessarily go your way, but through collaboration, through many different circumstances, looking back, you realize that was actually the best thing that could have happened to you in your career at that moment.
Oh my God, that's a book. I'll give you one. For me, there's many, but one, was a moment in my career when I was working really hard, doing everything that I needed to do to be noticed and to be valued, and I was passed over for a promotion, and I was devastated. And anybody in the room that knows me knows I'm very competitive. I don't like to get passed over for anything. And when that happened, I was extremely devastated, and it really put this cloud over my head around what I was doing and my purpose and leading with that purpose, that it took me some time to realize, and not right away, years later, I realized that the trajectory of my career would have been radically different if I would have gotten that promotion, and not in a positive way. So the lesson is that, you know, we work a plan, and then we work the plan. We want to do the following things. We want to grow. And growth is not always this way, right? Sometimes growing is horizontal. And sometimes we don't necessarily see why certain things don't happen or happen for us. But when we have enough time to reflect back, we realize that fate sometimes gets in the way in a good way.
I agree. So I'm going to tell you two things. The first one is, you know, I have had a million challenges in 34 years doing business. In fact, I have a lot of challenges right now. They are not going to go away. It's part of what we do. You know, few things have been more challenging than actually pack up the bags. You know, we were living in LA. I went to the school in LA. I got married in LA. We grew up in LA, my wife and I, after I came to the US in essence, and we had our 2 kids in LA. And I had an opportunity to transition to Atlanta, my first relocation with UPS. And it's really difficult to pack your bags and leave everything behind for that first relocation. It was incredibly challenging. My wife, you know, leaving everything behind for that move was a significant amount of uncertainty, a lot of risk. And, but we decided to do it. And quite frankly, if I wouldn't have made that move, I wouldn't be here speaking with you today. Because that's really what created a lot of different openings for me at that moment, and what showed that we were committed to doing what was necessary to advance in the organization. So it was a challenge. It could have gone the wrong way too, by the way. It could have been incredibly difficult and impactful. Now, the second thing that I was going to tell you, I was reflecting on this. I had to give a speech a couple of weeks ago for another organization, and they asked me a question specific to challenges in a way, but you know, what are the things that you remember most after all those years of working on things? And the first thing that came to mind, well, you know, I worked on this project, and I worked on that project, and these projects have huge impact. And then I ultimately realized that, you know what, when you retire and you leave a company, the least thing that matters is all the projects that you worked on. But what matters most is the impact that you had on people.
Amen.
Because they will be the ones that remember you. So all those challenges with projects and initiatives will be forgotten. But at the end, the impact on the people that you actually work with is what's going to be remembered.
That is a perfect close.
Almost.
Almost.
Almost. Juan, one more
Yes.
question.
Yes.
How else do you, and this is more like a prompt, how else do you collaborate with HITEC? Like something maybe that's happening next week?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, thank you for that. Absolutely. You know, I really think, you know, I was telling the ladies earlier today, as a CIO, you can imagine, I get invited to participate in a million different things. I could make a living by just simply going from conference to conference to conference every single week. I'm sure you do.
I do pretty well there.
But, you know, you got to be selective of what you actually engage in, and you got to make sure that you participate in events where you're going to have the most impact. And, you know, I'm really fortunate to work with a company, with Salesforce, who is truly supportive of companies that matter, and companies, or organizations that matter, organizations that truly have an impact. And Salesforce is hugely supportive of HITEC. I'm glad to be representing Salesforce here, and I'm glad that Salesforce also supports HITEC. It's great. So next week we have another event where we're going to have engagement at Salesforce specific to HITEC. I'm really glad that that's taking place. And my message to all of you is that as you get opportunities, we need these organizations, professional organizations with high level of reputation, certainly trusted. Remember the trust principle? Trusted organizations that can actually create more opportunities for Latino professionals everywhere. No better than HITEC to be able to do that in the technology space. So please support us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.